It's the Cup of Mets podcast, season 3, episode 9. I'm Ian Bosniak, and we'll be joined momentarily by Robert Venegas. In today's episode, we'll discuss everything from David Stearns, who dove into a little bit of a presser before today's doubleheader against the Dodgers. We'll discuss the series that will be against the Mets and Dodgers after yesterday's rainout, as well as an update on Kodai Senga, Drew Smith, and how we think Edwin Diaz can get back on track. We'll also look towards the trade deadline as per usual. But before we dive into all that, make sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and X. We are at Cup of Mets. Also, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, whether it be on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to head over to cupofmets.com to get all your latest merch. And last but not least, download that SeatGeek app, punch in code Cup of Mets at first purchase to receive $20 off. And with that, season 3, episode 9, let's do it. Robbie. Mets are looking wonderful. We're about to head out to Citi Field for a beautiful double dipper against the Dodgers. Really should be a lovely one. Thank God it's a great day out. How we doing?
Yeah, nothing beats $10 tickets, especially for a double dipper against the Dodgers, a legit team, a playoff contender. And good to see the likes of Shohei Ohtani again and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. But we'll see how the Mets fare today. It's not looking in our favor, but definitely excited to just head to the ballpark. I finally have a little bit of time to ourselves and enjoy some baseball, hopefully.
Yeah, and hopefully 2 dubs. I think it's been a weird year. You and I, we've most of the time we've been to like 7, 8, 9, 10 games already. These are going to be our third and fourth games respectively. We're both 0-2 on the season. Um, we had the blessings of going to opening day, which was a snooze fest, and then the a great game on Saturday. I don't know what day it was. I think it was the 27th of April. Pete Alonso when he hit his 200th, but Adrian Hauser shit the bed. So, we're hoping for some better outcomes today as the Mets face the Dodgers. It'll be Jose Quintana and Tyler McGill taking the bump. We'll touch more about that in a little bit. We expect this to be a quick episode. Just a few quick notes before we get going. David Stearns took to the podium earlier today. I'd say like 30 minutes ago, as per recording right now. He touched upon a few things that we were actually going to touch upon. So that's decently good. The one thing that I want to say is that he spoke about Pete Alonso. Somebody asked the question whether or not anything has changed when it comes to the Mets contract negotiations with Pete Alonso. And he said, quite frankly, that the Mets are trying to put him in the best position to succeed and help the Mets win every single game, day in and day out. But that's about it. Nothing's changed. I have the fullest belief, if it's not the trade deadline, I don't think Pete Alonso is a Met long term. I really don't.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting comment. It seemed like he wasn't committed or giving anything away in terms of like new information or how they feel about Pete Alonso moving forward. I do have to agree with you, unfortunately. It looks like this year will be the last year Pete Alonso dons a Met jersey. Whether he's traded a day before the deadline or honestly, I could see him being traded in June or July. The Mets are going to get an offer they can't refuse, I feel like, and David Stearns is going to pull the trigger with his first big move as a president of baseball operations.
Oh yeah, and he's gonna hear it. He's gonna hear it big time. But I think that some logical fans, you, myself, Matt, we've spoken about it in the past weeks. Alonso's becoming more and more one-dimensional. His average is up to 230. Woohoo, right? But that's nothing that you want to commit $28 million a year, especially when Lindor offers you a lot more, but he's also in that 230, 240, 250 range. So you just want a more complete player, I feel, as if you're going to be committing that much money. And I think that there are a few on the open market this upcoming season that the Mets can turn to. So, you have that there. Additionally, he also spoke and said that he believes that the Mets can make a run this season, but everything will be up to, the club and how they perform. He spoke a few weeks ago, or it may have been last week. He spoke saying how, you know, Philly and Atlanta, they're all playing really, really great baseball, but the Mets are capable. He pointed to the back of the baseball cards today, saying that there's way too much talent on this roster not to succeed. I don't see the run coming, but we have to see something in order to actually say to ourselves, oh yeah, that run is coming. He mentioned earlier this week as well, per source, that the Mets were still in information gathering mode, wherever the hell that means. So I listen, I don't know what to say. And then, something that we were going to talk about, just on the men, Francisco Alvarez will be partaking in some AA games. He's on the mend. He's coming back. Thankfully, he took BP the other day, felt great. He's eyeing a late June return. I think you and I will be praying that Tomas Nido is not the casualty when Francisco Alvarez returns and it's Omar Narvaez. Even though Narvaez did walk off the last game against San Francisco, Narvaez needs to get out of town, and it's time for him to depart. Kodai Senga, this is another one, Rob. Kodai Senga has nerve inflammation. He was completely shut down, went through the MRI, has nerve inflammation, and there is no timetable for his return. He was talking through his interpreter yesterday, saying how much that he wishes that he can get out there and compete and that he wants to and that it's frustrating. More and more, it's looking like we're not going to see him this season.
No, yeah, and we touched upon that last episode, I believe. Matt and I agreed that I think 2025 was was again the goal, but like the return date. Every time it seemed like every time he tried throwing or getting back into a groove, he just came up with an injury. So there it is, nerve inflammation in the elbow. Obviously, the elbow screams no good. That's a red flag for me. And again, the Mets are obviously smart by shutting them down, and hopefully Kodak can just rehab, worry about that, and then depending on where the Mets are, probably fourth or third in the NL East. By the time he feels good, just shut him down. Wait till 2025.
The most troubling thing to me is that initially it was his lat, right? And then all of a sudden it was his shoulder. And then there was even a video of him the other day walking off of City Field, and he was holding his trap muscle, it appeared like, which connects to the shoulder. And then obviously you have the nerve inflammation in the elbow. So not good news on Kodai. Listen, out of the 5-year contract, if he misses this season, performs next year like he did last season, I think we'll all take it, especially if we're not in any sort of position to compete this year. Very unfortunate for Kodai, but first and foremost, he needs to get healthy. David Peterson, on the other hand, he will make his return to the New York Mets tomorrow night. He will get the ball, so that's something to look forward to if you're a David Peterson enthusiast. I mean, he's pitched great in the minors thus far. Since beginning his rehab assignment, he was dealing with the hip injury, the hip flexor. But hey, bringing back David Peterson, if he can command the zone, we've seen him. We know that he can pitch well.
No, yeah, exactly. I think this is a big year for David Peterson. I'm glad he got called up. I want to see what he's made of. I know we said that time and time again. We said that last year. We said that 2 years ago. But again, this is finally a year where David Peterson can just focus on pitching, especially starting games. 2022, he was in and out of the pen. 2023 was really like, mechanical issues now that they have the pitching lab. I really want to see what David Peterson's made of. And again, I'd rather a David Peterson going into 2025 who's a 4 to 3 starter at best, than a Sean Manaea. Then you trade Sean Manaea, get some prospects, and Peterson's in the rotation as your like back end guy.
Definitely think that's the trajectory we're heading when it comes to David Peterson. In 64 career starts and 80 appearances in total, he does have a career 423 FIP. So that does kind of scream 4 or 5 in the rotation. But again, if you're competing, I definitely think that's a viable option for the Mets. And again, as you said, big year for David Peterson. So we'll see how he fares. Again, he's not a free agent, eligible to be a free agent until 2027. So the Mets have him under control. And with some of the names that are going to be dealt this upcoming trade deadline, offseason, with whatever they're doing, they're going to need some pitchers, in their docket. Still just 28 years old. And then last but not least, Drew Smith is expected back in early June. They're looking at the 2nd or 3rd of June. He was tremendous this year before going on the IL. Another bullpen arm. I mean, the bullpen's been taxed like crazy early on the season. Mendoza's been pulling Terry Collins and, using pitchers left and right, a lot of them making 20 some odd appearances. Just look at Jorge Lopez, for instance, and Reed Garrett. A lot of them, they're kind of showing their true colors. Not saying that they're not good pitchers, but they're the starters, man. That when they're going 5, 6 innings most, walking 4 or 5 batters, you leave no room, no margin for error. And I mean, the relievers have just been overworked to the point where now even the most lethal arms in the likes of Reed Garrett, Sean Reed Foley, or Jorge Lopez are struggling. Adam Ottavino, and obviously it's been capped off by Mr. Edwin Diaz.
Yeah, no, obviously getting any reliever that's been good for us. is good for the bullpen, but it's all on the starting pitching, like you said. Guys can't go five plus innings anymore, and even when they do, they still walk three or four and give up two or three runs, which it kind of plays Mendoza's hand in a way. Especially that loss in Cleveland when he only had like two or three guys available. Um, it's just very difficult to be successful as a playoff team, and again, then that puts pressure on your offense for trying to score, and then people try to do too much, and then now the Mets can't score. But again, with Drew Smith coming back, I hope he maybe not only not really gives us a spark, but just gives us innings out of the pen, good innings. So
So many things that we can just look at and say, oh, we hope that this guy makes an impact. We hope that that guy makes an impact. But as the Mets sit here on May 28th, with a record of 22 and 30, 8 games below 500, with the Phillies running ship in the National League East and the Braves right behind him, which, we should say Ronald Acuna tore his ACL yet again. So he's out for the rest of the season. Not great news for the Braves, but that means that the Braves will win the World Series, I believe, right? So the Braves won the World Series when Acuna was out last time. So Acuna's out for the season. But again, those just quick notes. Some players coming back, some players are being delayed via their rehab. And then obviously David Stearns comes out and says what he says, and the likes of he believes this team can make a run. But, if things kind of fall off the wagons, he's looking at the trade deadline and just giving updates on the team in general. And that's really all we can say. Again, the Mets open the series today, Rob and I. As we mentioned, signal and mission doubleheader. We love those. Game one will start at 4:10 p.m. It'll be Tyler Glasnow. So the Mets really have a good shot against Tyler Glasnow. Big Drip Tyler McGill will be on the mound in game one. And then in game two, it'll be the youngster Gavin Stone taking on Jose Quintana. So tons of uphill climbing for the Mets still as they embark on this Dodger series. And then they have a 3-game set with the Diamondbacks. So things just are not getting any easier for the Mets. But if they're going to make this run, make some sort of run that David Stearns still believes that they can, it has to start with obviously beating up on the lesser teams, but they have to do pretty well against some of these good teams in order to creep back into the NL East. Because as we mentioned before, Phillies Braves look like legitimate World Series contenders.
yeah, no, and again, not taking anything away from Philadelphia. They're a great team. They look legit this year, but their schedule has been the easiest so far. So and they've been taking advantage of it. The Mets, when they play lesser teams, like you said, they do have to take advantage of it. So they can't lose 2 out of 3 to the Marlins like they did 2 weeks ago, I believe. But again, like you said best, they're starting. It starts with the starting pitching, and if they don't go five or more within this home stand, and they don't win at home, and then they don't take a couple on the road like they should, and I just want them to compete. But you hit it on the head, Ian. They got to compete against these better teams, especially if they stay afloat and make this quote unquote run. Then you could beat up on the lesser teams. Maybe things change by June and July.
Just consistency, man. You know what I mean? Like if they're gonna suck, just suck. Don't be down 8-0, put up a 5 spot, and then all of a sudden make us all believe that the Mets are coming back, right? Or don't, bring a 1-1 tie into the 10th and 11th inning, when the home team really does have the advantage with the ghost runner on second base, and then completely blow up and not be able to score with runners in scoring position. It's just, if you look at their last 6 games, the 3 against Cleveland in Cleveland, which Francisco Lindor did mention that he misses losing. I mean, Francisco Francisco Lindor does say, well, he's losing quite a bit in New York. But Francisco Lindor did mention that the biggest thing that he misses in Cleveland is winning, and that definitely hurts. And it's true. I can't blame them. But look, the Guardians committed money to an all-around player in Jose Ramirez, somebody to build around, right? He does everything right. The Mets need more of that. They lost 3-1 in the opener, 7-6, and then 6-3 in the 3-game set. And then when they came home to face San Francisco, they lost 8-7, 7-2, and then walked off. Somehow Narvaez walked off. I still want him gone as anything. He walked off on Sunday. You know, I just look at some of these games, and how many did the Mets have the lead? All of them, or 5 out of 6, something along those lines. And they blew it every single time, whether it was the starters allowing the team just to stay in the game or the Mets offense not capitalizing on opportunities. And then obviously you have Edwin Diaz. When Edwin Diaz, if you look at that 4-run lead that he had in Miami, if you want to count that as a blown save, there's been 5 blown saves over the last several weeks for Edwin Diaz. If you take those 5 losses away and make them wins, the Mets are what? 27-25, like and and listen, the Mets would have been nowhere without Edwin Diaz in 2022. So it goes both ways, but you just look at the way that they've been playing recently, and it's like one day the offense is up, but the pitching can't hold anyone down, whether it be the starters or the bullpen. Then the next day, the offense look like they've never swung a baseball bat before and they can't score any runs. And Severino or Minaya will give them 5, 6 shutout innings and then leave it to the bullpen. And as we mentioned before, Mendoza has been put in a situation where he's had to use his relievers more and more, and especially in high leverage situations. And it's really just kind of ruining the club right now. And I don't think there's any immediate fix unless the starters follow what maybe like a Luis Severino has done. Even though Severino's had his hiccups, he still has gone 7 innings on occasion, 8 innings on occasion. I think that was only once, but they're not getting any length from their starters. And then the bullpen is blowing up because they've been used so much. We're still walking the world. The offense still inconsistent as shit. I don't know if there's any, I don't know. I'm just, we were talking about it before, saying that this episode would be labeled the roast of Edwin Diaz. It should just be the roast of the 2024 New York Mets, because all in all, they look like crap, whether it be the offense, the bullpen, the rotation. And it sucks that we're sitting here on May 28th looking forward to that trade deadline already, because none of us believe in this club. And even though we like the upfrontness, I guess you could say, of David Stearns and what he says, I don't, I said it before. I don't think we're making a run, and it just blows that we're just sitting here waiting for the deadline to trade some of our best pieces.
No, yeah, you hit that on the head. I mean, I can't even, you just went off right there. But that you made a lot of great points. If it's not one thing or the other, whereas 2022, again, a pitcher didn't have it. The offense was high and mighty. They would pick them up. Again, even the likes of like coming back from 7-1 in the ninth inning, that offense was definitely different in 2022. But again, still some of the same characters from that squad. Not all of them, obviously, but yeah, it starts with the starting pitching. And then obviously, again, if the starting pitching's on, then the offense is inconsistent. So you hit it on the head right there, Ian. I mean, nothing more to say. But if they want to turn that ship around, then yeah, they got to play more consistent and they got to win games, man. They got to win those 3-1 ball games. They got to win those 2-0 ball games. They got to win divisional games. And right now, it's just not. Obviously, it's not happening. So again, if they're on the same trajectory, then of course it's going to be another stellar season.
Right. And that brings us to our next point, where it just seems like nothing can go right. Certain aspects of the club cannot click at the right time. You look at Reed Garrett, right? And I, for one, was for the first time, I haven't had many issues with Carlos Mendoza. I know that Matt doesn't love him. I don't know how you truly feel about Carlos Mendoza, Rob, but for the first time in the Mets 8-7 loss against San Francisco, I saw, and again, I think I've said it 3 or 4 times already. The bullpen's taxed. Mendoza's been using the same guys, but he's kind of had to, right? Especially with some of the injuries, the up and down performances of some. He's gone to the likes of Reed Garrett more often and Jorge Lopez more often. But Reed Garrett, who started in tremendous fashion, now has a 133 whip over his last 7 games. He's 0-2 with a 7 ERA, 13 hits allowed, and 9 innings pitched. His ERA has ballooned to 267. 267, excellent ERA. But when it was below 1, that's a big jump over his last 15 games. He's got a 393 ERA. So you look at someone like Reed Garrett, and to me, when I was watching that game, I don't know about you, Rob, the Mets were up 7-3, or excuse me, they were up 6-2, and then they were up. Hold on, here we go. 1-1, 2-1, 3-2, 5-2, 6-2. Yeah, so the Mets were up 6-2. Then the Giants made it 6-3. And then Patrick Bailey comes up with the bases loaded. And I don't know about you, but Reed Garrett looked gassed. He looked gassed. And there were still an arm or two available in the bullpen, and Mendoza keeps and rides Reed Garrett, and he gives up a go-ahead grand slam to Patrick Bailey, who's been hitting the crap out of the ball. I didn't disagree. I didn't agree with that move, but I'm not going to be one of those people that are out here blaming the coaching staff and blaming Carlos Mendoza because, quite frankly, the starters are not performing like they should, even though the expectations weren't fully there like the offense. The offense is dead 9 times out of 10. So it's kind of left to the bullpen, but that really frustrated me. I felt like Mendoza should have made a move quicker. I just kind of feel like the bullpen's taxed right now. And not only that, I think the Mendoza's leaving them in a little bit too long because he may feel like he doesn't have enough options, or I don't know what it is. Maybe first year manager hiccups. Like I don't know, but
Well, it's clear that Reed Garrett, obviously, in Mendoza's mind, took a bigger role in the bullpen, especially with the struggles of Edwin Diaz. But again, I don't like that move either, and I also disagree with it because not only did he pitch that game, but he could pitch the game before in Cleveland, in a later inning, and he was struggling then. So that was kind of a question mark move for me. Um, but again, I'm not sure who was available at the time, and maybe it's two guys that aren't used to high leverage situations. But you're in a major league bullpen, you got to be ready for anything. Again, I do like Mendoza personally. I liked how aggressive he was in terms of like on the base paths and with bunting and running, but it seems like he shied away from that. Granted, the inconsistencies of the offense. So it's hard to steal when you're down or you're chasing, and especially in the later innings, you don't want to run yourself out of an inning. But I don't mind Mendoza at all. I think he's a good manager. I think he will be a good manager, but the Mets need to do a better job of giving him the pieces as well.
absolutely. What do you think of the new lineup construction that we were asking for a while? We've been seeing Francisco Lindor leading off, followed by Pete Alonso batting second, the high on base percentage of Brandon Nimmo third, JD Martinez fourth. What do you think about the lineup construction? You digging it or?
Oh no, definitely. I think I tweeted it. I think I quote tweeted it when it first came out, and the first four was on point with what I wanted personally. I think it gives Lindor more of a not an approach, but like more of a mental approach in terms of like, okay, now I got to see more pitches. I got to be a leadoff. I got to work my way on, so then the big boppers can drive me in, opposed to having that mentality batting third or second, being like, okay, I'm one of the guys I need to drive someone in. I think Lindor is better suited as a table setter. And then again, Brandon Nimmo, I know he's still struggling a little bit, but I agree with it. At batting third, he's been the best hitter. He's gained more power. He's hit for more power. And then Pete Alonso at that 2 hole, he's going to get maximum at bats. And not only will that help the Mets, but that'll help the Mets in terms of his value if he starts to hit more.
I agree, and I didn't really think that I would have liked the lineup construction because I'm an on base heavy guy leading off the game, like many are and should be. So Brandon Nimmo taking out of that spot was something that I had to adjust to, but just recognizing the struggles of Lindor and Alonso and needing to put them in a better position to succeed just to get their feet wet and become table setters and get back on track. I think that was the right move. Not sure if that came from Stearns and Co. or if that was a Mendoza Gibbons type of idea, but that's definitely something. But, just going back to the bullpen very quickly before we touch upon the continued struggles of Edwin Diaz. Jorge Lopez, he's continued to pitch well, but he has now pitched. How many games do you think Jorge Lopez has pitched in?
I haven't watched much, but because of coaching. But again, I think around like 15 to 20 plus.
26. 26 games. And the Mets have played in 52. So he's pitched in half of the Mets games already. So there's that. As we already mentioned, Reed Garrett before. Jake Diekman, his ERA is up to 386. He's also appeared in 20 games thus far this season. Adam Ottavino has struggled as well as of recent. His ERA is up to 360. He's been in 20 games. Again, he's 38 years old. It just seems like, but again, I don't know how you can expect it to go differently when you have guys like Sean Manaea who can't go more than 5 innings, a guy like Adrian Hauser who may throw out of the bullpen, and then I have no idea how Adrian Hauser's still on this team. It's Stearns is just holding on to him for some odd reason. He sucks, but Sean Manaea, he's pitched 10 games this season. He started 10 games this season and he's tossed 51 and a third of an inning. So he's averaging just a tiny bit over 5 innings per game. You can't have that, especially from someone that's pitching well. He's got a 3.16 ERA, he's 3-1 as well. So the Mets are really only getting innings out of Sevy. as well as Christian Scott, who's bounced back and pitched well. And he's really only had one rough outing, and that was against the Miami Marlins, where he gave up 4 runs over four. But last game against San Francisco, bounced back nicely. Was not involved in the decision, but went six, gave up 2 hits, walked one, gave up 2 runs, struck out four. Christian Scott, 3.97 ERA over his first 4 games. But again, the starters have to go longer because if not, this bullpen's just going to fall apart and the Mets are going to find themselves. I mean, they're not going to be the bottom dwellers in the NL East because the Marlins look absolutely abysmal, but the Mets are going to end up in the top five, top 10 worst teams in baseball if this continues.
No, yeah, and those are four guys that when we signed them, we obviously saw all of them have a big role in the bullpen. Um, I was just thinking about this when you bring up like Adrian Hauser and Sean Manaea, guys like them. Um, what if the Mets the Mets should honestly like consider an opener, a guy that goes 2 innings, three and tries to go three. If he gets into trouble right away, you put in a guy like Sean Manaea who can give you five when he's on. Then if you really think about it, you're already in like the seventh, eighth inning. Um, and then you save your bullpen in a way. Again, we're not the Tampa Bay Rays. We're not. Again, maybe Mendoza doesn't like the idea of an opener and wants to go rotate like a consistent rotation of 1 through 5. Then so be it. But Christian Scott, he's looked great. I love his competitiveness. He's a young arm, electric. Again, really reminds me of Zach Wheeler. But yeah, again, when you look into like the Mets rotation, it's like what teams would really want pitchers like in the Mets rotation. Like again, I think one that stands out is Severino. I think Severino's going to get traded if the Mets continue to play like this. I think a guy like Sean Manaea, again, depending on how Peterson does, maybe it changes the Mets' perspective. He's included in the package with a Harrison Bader or something. They get shipped to a wild card team. Who knows? But again, he does have another year, I believe, on his contract. And again, I think that's another arm that the Mets could consider to keep for next year's team.
Right. Yeah. And before we dive into, the players that we could trade, I agree. Luis Severino, I love the fact that he can pitch in New York because he knows how to pitch in New York and he's looked really good bouncing back. His stuff looks great. I would love to extend him, but what we could probably get for him, given the market at the trade deadline, especially for what pitchers go for, you kind of see the writing on the wall that Sevy's not going to be a Met for long. Just want to touch upon quickly Edwin Diaz. As I said, 4 blown saves as of recent. We could really make it 5 if we wanted to, considering that blow up in Miami, which we touched upon last week. After his blown save, when it was 2-1 against the Giants, he ended up giving up a run in the bottom half of the ninth, in the top half of the ninth inning to allow the Giants to tie the game. And then the bullpen completely imploded, gave up 5 runs in the extras to lose that game 7-2. But Edwin Diaz right now, 5.40 ERA, has been worth negative -0.1 WAR, 4.58 FIP. The strikeout percentage is down. The walk rate is down as well, but he just doesn't look right. Same type of stuff that we were talking about last week. That slider's looking more like a cutter hanging over the dish. The fastball, he's had a little bit more zip on it, which is nice. Earlier on the season, we were seeing 96, 97, but now he's throwing like 98, 99. But he's just erratic. And not once, aside from maybe his first couple appearances this year, have both pitches been on both fastball and off speed. I think that's the most concerning thing when you look at Diaz, on top of the fact that he is openly admitting that his confidence is at a all-time low, and it's just not good. I think the Mets should be taking him out of the closer's role. I know that they did it the other day, allowed him to pitch an inning. Against the Giants, he struck out 2, didn't give up a run, but then they immediately put him back into that closer's role and he blew the game. I just think that as of right now, especially as we're just trying to creep back into some competitive baseball, despite Diaz being the best arm when healthy on the club, I just don't think it makes sense to continuously put him in these situations, considering, I mean, I hate to say it, we know certain outcomes and he just doesn't look right. You don't want to ruin his confidence beyond the season.
Mm, No, definitely, of course. Again, that was another move that kind of made me scratch my head. Was that he looked good in that one appearance where it was just the seventh inning, not that much meaning. In the inning, he looked good, 2 strikeouts, and an inning of work. and then again thrown back into the fire right away. I really did disagree with that. Under Mendoza's, I don't know what Mendoza was thinking. I didn't hear the post game conference on why he decided to do that, but I just think Edwin Diaz needs to take a step back, take the low leverage innings, and I think he'll again by the end of the summer. I think he'll be the closer once again. But the Mets shouldn't rush anything. Just keep giving them low leverage innings, sixth, seventh innings, and see what you can do. Again, another guy that could pitch 2 days in a row. Maybe give some time off for guys like Ottavino, Lopez, and even Reed Garrett.
Right. I'd go Jorge Lopez. He would be my closer, and then a Reed Garrett as well, especially if you can lower how many appearances he's making. But Diaz, the funniest thing is, me, I'm big with advanced metrics, and I love FIP, great measurement for pitchers. But as I said before, 5.40 ERA, 4.58 FIP. I got to dive into this more to figure out how they get the figures of expected ERA and expected FIP. But you look at those giant numbers, his expected ERA is 3.09 and his expected FIP is 2.67. So I got to dive into this a little bit. So, you know, I suppose advanced metrics are seeing something a little bit better than what he is showing. But at the end of the day, FIP is what you look at if the ERA is high and the FIP is not far below it. He's lost 2.5 ticks off his fastball. He's averaging 97.4 miles per hour on his fastball this year, so he's not getting the swing and misses. And then again, when you go and you look at a guy like Edwin Diaz in a baseball savant type of environment where, they're looking at players barreling the ball and they're looking at swing and misses, he's still in the 98th percentile in both strikeout and whiff percentage, in the 98th percentile, 82nd percentile in chase percentage, in the chase percentile. But then you look at the barrel percentage, he's within the 13th percentile in barrel percentage, 50th percentile in walk percentage, hard hit percentage, 51st percentile. So he's getting hit hard. And again, players are barreling up the ball, they're hitting them. And it's just something that I don't love. And similarly, obviously, Diaz is pitching, Kodai's not. But I want to look at these two guys along with a Nimmo, along with a Lindor, and then the young kids that we have and say, okay, if we're looking at 2025, how can we put these guys in the best situations possible to succeed going into next year? And I think that means getting Diaz's head right and having him build up his innings this year. He doesn't need all the saves in the world. Saves don't mean a ton anymore, right? But get him in a position where he feels comfortable that he can really compete and be himself next year, have that first year under his belt this season where he missed last season. And then same with Kodai. If he's not ready to compete, save him for next year. If he's going to be ready by opening day next year, so be it. Obviously, we all want to see them win right now, but when you're seeing the ineffectiveness of a guy like Edwin Diaz and then a guy like Kodai Senga with all these setbacks, you don't want to do anything crazy that'll set the team back even further, because as Stearns has preached, and he mentioned it earlier today, he believes the Mets are on this trajectory of sustained success despite what we're seeing right now. So I don't know. I feel like I've been talking a lot. Thank you. I know everyone didn't hear Rob. Rob just said that was good because he's muted, but yeah, thank you. Just a final note. We always have to talk about the trade deadline here, especially when the Mets. It's funny because when the Mets are kind of hovering around 500, you look at the deadline, but you don't look at the deadline in its capacity. But then when your team is either really, really good, you're looking at who you could buy. But then when the team's really, really bad, you're looking at who you can sell. So obviously, there are several players that we can look at. Pete Alonso right now. I think the Mets should trade him, especially if he continues to hit the way he has. He's hit 254 over his last 15 games, which is an uptick from what he was at. 12 home runs, 26 RBIs, 768 OPS. When I'm looking at some teams around baseball right now, you look at some of the competitive teams that are out there right now that are playing really good baseball. The Cubs, the Guardians. The Guardians are 18th when it comes to overall WAR put out by their offensive production. Same with the Royals. The Royals are having a great season. They're 20th. The Tigers are right there. They're 23rd. The Reds are right there. They're 25th. Arizona, a team that's on the cusp, and we'll see them in a couple days. They're 13th. Milwaukee, they're 11th. Minnesota, they're 10th. So you really have those powerhouses atop in the likes of the Braves and the Dodgers and the Padres and the Orioles and the Phillies. But then there are some teams that are right on the cusp. What would you want for Pete Alonso considering, and you don't have to give me exact names, but what would you want for Pete Alonso if you're trading him, knowing that he'll be a free agent after this year?
I mean, yeah, that's hard for me exactly what I would want. But again, what I would want is for the Mets to trade him in the American League just so you don't see him in the National League, especially obviously I don't think the Mets would do this, but again, divisional opponent with Pete Alonso, I can't see it. But again, just get him out of the National League, help an American League team out. You mentioned the Guardians. I do like that. I think that'd be a nice fit for them, having him at intertwine at DH and first base with Josh Naylor. But again, a team like the Mariners, even I think would be a good fit for Pete Alonso. But again, what would I want? At least, I guess again, you only have him for half a year, so again, at least maybe two top 10 prospects for one of those guys. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not good like with the trading GM like you and Maddie are, but again, I consider that he's only going to be on that team for half a year. He's going to hit free agency next year. So again, and I would want him to get shipped to an American League team.
I agree. I like the Guardians. They have a kid, Kyle Manzardo, who is 23 years old. He's currently on the big league roster, I believe. He's hit 200 this year in 17 games. Hasn't hit a home run yet, 3 RBIs, but he is their number 2 overall prospect. And who knows? Maybe the Guardians are saying, hey, let's go for a ring. We haven't won since the 1930s, I believe, 1940s, whatever it is. But they have the longest drought right now. So maybe they say, screw it. Let's go in. Let's get an Alonso. I'd ask for Kyle Manzardo. I'm not sure where he ranks in MLB Pipeline or MLB America's top 100, but he's someone that I would look at. And then you look at the Royals, right? I think that we can both agree then when looking at who we're going to trade, the Mets need young talent that are borderline ready, whether it be high AA, AAA, or at the major league level. I would look at the Royals and as well. Somebody that I love is Michael Massey, who has played 3 seasons thus far last year in 2023, had a 655 OPS, not the greatest showing, but hit 15 home runs. This year he is on the IL right now, but he has played in 29 games, 6 home runs, 23 RBIs, 294 average, 835 OPS. He's a second baseman, somebody that can play up the middle, also can play shortstop as well. They also have a cream of prospects within their system that they could trade for. I'm not sure if the Royals would want to go ahead and do that, however, because their window is going to continue to expand. But at the same time, when you have a player like Bobby Witt Jr. who's doing what he's doing, they could make a run, right? So they have arms, which is what I would assume the Mets would want. They have Mason Barnett, who has reached high AA ball, and he's not pitching that well this year, but he has struck out 55 batters in 41 and 2/3 of an inning. Then they also have Ben Cardona, who's a right-handed pitcher. He'll be ready by 2025. So there are a ton of teams that will be willing to deal with the Mets. It just depends on, what the Mets can get back for a guy who's going to be hitting free agency. Same thing goes for JD Martinez, but we made a point last week that with Martinez, his contract's deferred. Therefore, a team would be acquiring a JD Martinez and really only giving up a prospect. They won't have to pay him a ton. I think a team like the Milwaukee Brewers would be a good fit for JD Martinez, and I think David Stearns would be a perfect guy to deal with the Brewers, knowing that system the way he does. And they can get a ready piece, even if it's a bullpen arm. We know, especially being 37, 38 years old, Martinez may be 36, I don't know. But a guy like JD Martinez, you can definitely get a player or two. Nothing towards the cream of the crop, but very reliable players that you can go forward with heading into next season. And I think Martinez is someone that I expect to be dealt. I think we can all agree on that. The next 2 players, I want to get your take. I know I mentioned before that I would love to extend Luis Severino if they could, just given the fact that the Mets don't have many arms going into next year. But I think that the Mets could get a good amount for Luis Severino. He's got a 3.8 FIP this season, and he's pitched really, really well. You look at some of the teams that are contending this year, and you look towards the bottom half, and you look at some of the teams that are competing. The Astros are starting to make a run. They're 22nd in the league when it comes to overall team pitching. The Giants are right there. They're 19th. Of course, we don't want to let the Yankees win, but the Yankees are 18th overall. Who knows? The Yankees may love to get Sevy back. I wouldn't mind. I think I'm at the point where if the Mets can get a major league ready player, I would do it. And these are the guys that the Mets are going to be trading because they're coming off the books at the end of the season. The Mets are going to get what they can get. And then you also have dead money coming off like Scherzer, like Verlander, like James McCann, right? And they'll be able to spend money this offseason. So I think a guy like Severino and Martinez and Alonso are guys that should be dealt and get the best value, get the best bang for your buck that you can. And I would start, I don't know about you, I'd start doing it in June. I'm not waiting until the deadline. Especially if the wheels completely fall off the wagon as we hit mid-June towards the end of June. If the writing's on the wall, just do it because then it also gives the Mets it gives the Mets a better chance for a better lottery pick as well.
No, yeah, I mean, again, that's a great point. I also think that if the wheels fall off, obviously, if we get to that point where we're 10, 20 games under, then yes, you do it in June. You do it as early as you can. Honestly, I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for this, but I think JD Martinez, I think Detroit Tigers would be a nice fit for him. There's familiarity there. Again, a guy who hit really well in that ballpark and a nice little young team that he can mentor. A guy like Sevy, I do like the Yankees. I do like the Astros. Astros have a lot of depth in their farm system, and I think the Mets could really make a move there, make a move that'll help us in the long run, whether it's a major league arm or one that's close. And again, I agree with you on that one. The Yankees, I thought about the Yankees instantly. Garrett Cole, obviously he's hurt. And again, the Yankees are doing well right now, and there's familiarity in that category. So again, I think Sevy proved, like you said, that he could pitch in New York, and he has pitched in big games for the Yankees, whether he did well or not. But he's been in that situation, and I think that's a good trade scenario as well.
And we always know how many teams want pitching at the deadline and how crucial it is. So it's good to see some of the better teams in the league struggling on the mound because that puts us in a good position. You brought up Sean Manaea before. He does have one more year left on his contract. Given going into next season, the Mets have Kodai Senga under team control, David Peterson, Tyler McGill. You expect that they'll sign somebody else with all the money coming off the books. Would you go ahead and trade? Who am I missing? Oh, Christian Scott. Hello. Um, would you go ahead and trade Sean Manaea? Obviously, you would want to get a decent amount, but would you trade him with the idea of let's get the best bang for our buck? Or, hey, he's owed $14 million next year. Let's get rid of him, given that he can't go beyond 5 innings, but he is effective. Which way would you go with Sean Manaea? Would you hold him, knowing that he's a good veteran piece going into next year and the likelihood that we'll trade a Luis Severino? Um, or would you try to trade him and get rid of that money going into next year?
Oh, again, I think I would get whatever. If I get a deal I can't refuse, and in Stearns' eyes, then yeah, I'm doing it in a heartbeat. Again, Sean Manaea has looked good at times, but he's proven that he can't go past 5 innings. I threw out that idea of him coming in after an opener. Who knows what the Mets think and do moving forward, especially in 2025. But I do see a scenario where he stays and they keep him going on to next year. And who knows, maybe they trade him in the offseason next year. But like I said, I do see a scenario where he stays. But if there's an offer that that the Mets really like and David Stearns wants to pull the trigger and say, hey, let's free that 14 million so we have more to spend next offseason, I wouldn't mind it as well.
Absolutely. And then the last piece, well, we got a couple more pieces and then we'll just look ahead and we got to head to Citi Field. Harrison Bader, he's playing good baseball. His OPS is 690, but he's doing his thing in the field. He's almost hitting 280. He's got 2 home runs, 16 ribbies. He's stolen 8 bags. Listen, if the Mets could deal him like they dealt Tommy Pham last year, get a player like Jeremy Rodriguez, I'd be fine. Obviously, you would want him to be more major league ready than Jeremy Rodriguez, but I think Bader's definitely somebody that's going to be dealt because Tyrone Taylor under team control and I think we said it last episode. We all love Tyrone Taylor, love the energy that he brings, the at bats that he brings, the defense as well. Um, so Tyrone Taylor definitely want to stay. Harrison Bader, I've loved watching him this year as a Met, but I think that he'll hold value for another team that's looking for an outfielder. I don't have a list that says, hey, all these teams need an outfielder, so I can't really say who. Um, but Harrison Bader, I definitely think is going to be dealt as well. The last two that I want to bring up because I think Matt, unless it was you, Rob, I really don't know, but I didn't tweet it, so I think it was Matt. Matt put out a bunch of players that he thought that should be dealt, and the Mets should go ahead and play the youth, and really incorporate that into their team right now. See what they have at the high AAA level, meaning the Luke Ritters of the world, the Rylan Bannons of the world, and call them up when certain players are dealt. Just looking to the bullpen quickly, I agree with something that Matt said. You had a couple people counter the tweet. We put out there that the Mets should look to trade a Sean Reed Foley and keep a guy like Reed Garrett, even though Garrett has been struggling as of recent. I agree wholeheartedly with that. I don't know where you stand. Sean Reed Foley this year has been tremendous. 18 strikeouts and 13 and a third of an inning with a 135 ERA in 14 games. But Sean Reed Foley, oh, his middle name's Ian. That's great. But Sean Reed Foley, while he is under team control for the next couple of years, he definitely is somebody that's injury prone. And given, as we mentioned before, the want and need for bullpen arms and arms in general towards the deadline, you would want to do it. He'll only be 29 going into the 2025 campaign. And if the Mets could trade a Sean Reed Foley with the upside that he's pitching right now, I think a team would trade two of their top 15 to 20 prospects for a guy like Reed Foley if he can make an impact. Um, again, you have to hope that he continues to pitch well and Mendoza doesn't completely burn him out. But I think that Reed Foley's somebody that's not going to be thrown every day given his injury history. But don't be surprised if you see Sean Reed Foley dealt for a good package because he's definitely somebody that has pitched well this year and could definitely bring back some good pieces given the fact that many teams need bullpen arms.
Yeah, no, you can have enough arms, especially during the playoff run. Sean Reed Foley has looked really good this season. In his second stint with the team. I do like the fact that Reed Garrett has, not only options but like control. Team control is very valuable. The Mets, and especially Stearns have preached having young control, or not even young controllable arms, but again, controllable
It's
arms.
the options in Garrett as well that you just mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I understand he's been struggling, but when you throw three times every 4 games, or pitch 6 times out of the 7 out of the week or whatever, then of course you're gonna burn out. But again, Sean Reed Foley has proven himself, and so has Reed Garrett. But again, Reed Garrett has more team control, so I'm taking a Reed Garrett with a year or two of team control. And again, if maybe a team says, "Hey, we realize the team control and we want to offer you more for Reed Garrett," then the Mets, the ball's in their court. But if anything that could help us bring assets for the future and sustainable success, you got to do it.
When do you think Reed Garrett's a free agent, Robbie?
Uh, I feel like I've seen this, but I don't know. 2029.
Close, 2030. 2030. That's why you want to keep him because you want to hope for a bounce back by Edwin Diaz next year. But aside from the likes of certain players that are under team control, a lot of these guys will be gone. Diekman, Jorge Lopez, Adam Ottavino, they'll all be gone. Therefore, the Mets will need an arm similar to the rotation when we brought up Mania before. But that's that right now. Things are not great in Mets land, even if they're coming off a win. They're 22-30. But, looking ahead, as I mentioned today, the Mets will get going in about 40 minutes. So you'll be listening to this afterwards, but it'll be Tyler McGill facing Tyler Glass now. I'm expecting a Dodger shutout. And then it'll be Jose Quintana for the Mets taking on Gavin Stone later today. Tomorrow, it'll be David Peterson versus James Paxton, an arm that the Mets passed up on this offseason. Paxton's look amazing. And then they have a 3-game set as the Diamondbacks come in. It'll be Christian Scott on Thursday, Luis Severino on Friday. And most likely they'll need a 6-man rotation until around June 5th. So I would expect Adrian Hauser to get that start because Jose Budo's options are limited. And you don't want to call him up and expose him to waivers. So that's what it's looking like for the lovely New York Mets here as we wrap up episode 9 of season 3. Robert, any final notes before we hop off here?
Yeah, Jose Buda won AAA Pitcher of the Week, I believe. So yeah, that just says a lot. He should have never been sent down. And he should still be on this major league roster, in my opinion. But we're not going to get into it because we got to catch a game. But I don't know. Again, if they want that quote unquote run that David Stearns has mentioned today, they got to play better on the starting pitching end, and the offense has to wake up and play more consistent. Again, I do love the Mets. I'll always support you guys, but again, if we're just going to play mediocre to mid baseball, then again, I'm going to call for some trades and I'm going to call for a rebuild, aka rebuild. So again, hoping for the best, expecting the worst. Let's have fun at the ballpark tonight.
You know we will, win or lose. Yeah. For the bats, get your heads out of your asses. For the starters, if you're gonna go 3, 4, 5 innings, do it consistently. Okay. I don't want to see you go 8 innings and then all of a sudden go 3 innings because you're playing with everybody. Okay. And then I'm not putting this blame on Mendoza because he really doesn't have any options if the rotation's not given into him. But don't allow these bullpen arms, to be Ryota Igarashi 2.0 or any of these guys. Their arms are going to fall off. Okay. Jorge Lopez in all these games, Reed Garrett in 19 games. If you're looking to potentially deal a Reed Garrett or a Sean Reed Foley, preserve them. If the Mets are out of it, preserve them. Continue calling up these schmucks from AAA that suck. Use Josh Walker, use whoever. Let these guys succeed in certain positions so that they don't lose value. Let's get the best bang for our buck and go from there. But again, according to David Stearns, we're going to go on a run. So hopefully next week or later on this week when we touch base, the Mets will have swept the Dodgers, will have swept the Diamondbacks, and we'll be right back into contention. But I don't think either of us are expecting that. Yeah, this was fun. This episode was a little all over the place, but that's what happens for a midday episode as we're, running to Citi Field now. Again, be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and X. We are at Cup of Mets. Subscribe to the podcast, whether it be on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Head over to cupofmets.com for all of the latest podcast merch. And last but not least, download that SeatGeek app, punch in code Cup of Mets at first purchase to get $20 off. And with that, we're heading off to the big city, Citi Field. For Robert Venegas, I'm Ian Bosniak. Everybody hang in there. Let's go Mets. Good night, everybody. And with that, season 3, episode 9. Let's do it.